Mm-mm. This food is great. Thank you for inviting me over, Faye.
Of course. I wanted to make use of the vegetables and fruits I've grown over the past week. Would you like some more?
No, thank you. I've already served myself quite a lot. I actually don't think I can finish my plate as is. Is there a trash can anywhere I could use?
No need for that. You can just add your scraps to my compost bin.
Compost bin?
Yeah, it's in the corner of my yard, over there by the shed.
Oh, yes. Um, Faye? I feel a bit embarrassed asking this, but what exactly is compost? And what foods can I put in the pile?
Don't be embarrassed about asking questions like that. If you never ask, you'll never learn. To answer your first question, compost is a nutrient-rich material that results from the decomposition of organic matter such as vegetable and fruit scraps, grass clippings, coffee grounds, fresh leaves, and more. Compost provides valuable nutrients to soil. Just like how we take vitamins to make us healthier and stronger, compost makes soil healthier and stronger.
So anything that grows from the earth can be composted? I'm assuming animal products can't be part of the mix.
Anything that once lived has the potential to be composted, but materials such as meat, dairy, and fish should be avoided when composting at home since they produce odors that can attract wild animals to the site. Animal products also take longer to decompose compared to plant material because of their higher concentrations of fats and proteins. Despite this, industrial composting programs usually accept animal products, so don't be afraid to include them if you participate in curbside compost programs. You can still compost animal products at home, but be aware that it requires special equipment and advanced techniques.
So materials that grow from the earth are recommended for compost at home. I'm assuming this paper plate is not compostable then?
Not exactly. Compost waste can be divided into two distinct groups. One is green waste, which includes the organic materials I talked about previously. These include fruit, vegetables, grass clippings, plants, coffee grounds, and fresh leaves. Green waste encompasses colorful and wet organic matter that are nutrient-packed. However, for compost to occur, you need food, air, and moisture for the micro and macroorganisms to decompose the food and other organic materials. When composting, you want to pay attention to the moisture content. Too much water in compost can ferment and not decompose your organic matter, which will leave you with rotten food instead of broken down organic matter. To offset moisture, it is recommended to add about 3 to 4 parts of carbon-rich brown waste to offset 1 part of the wet, nitrogen-rich green waste. Brown waste are things that you can find in nature that are generally dry. It can include things such as sawdust, wood chips, eggshells, sticks, and twigs. Paper materials such as newspapers and cardboard can also be added to the mix. A perfect example of brown waste is dried leaves that you can save plenty of during the fall season. These materials are dry natural waste which provide energy to the pile and absorb extra moisture. Plain, uncoated 100% paper plates like the ones we are using are fine for composting since the paper comes from trees. Compost is a managed aerobic decomposition process, which means it requires oxygen to occur. You'd have to turn or move the compost pile to introduce oxygen, which speeds up the process of decomposition. This should be done periodically, keeping in mind that more frequent rotations help speed up the process. With all of the food, air, and water introduced to the mix, microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi will consume the food provided and break it down into nutrient-rich humus, which is the result of our compost. In total, the decomposition process should take anywhere between 6 to 12 months, depending on the size of your pile and in what season you choose to compost. When it's done, finished compost will have a dark and crumbly texture and smell somewhat sweet and earthy. If it smells like rotting food, the compost is not ready yet. My second compost bin here has finished humus to use. I use my finished compost for gardening, tree planting, and for my house plants. Not only does compost provide plants with vital nutrients, it also increases soil life, prevents erosion, and supports carbon sequestration, which captures and stores CO2 from the atmosphere.
Composting seems very useful. I would love to compost myself at home, but I live in an apartment. I don't have access to a backyard like you do here. I'm afraid it'll create smells and attract pests inside my studio. Is there any way I could still participate?
Of course you can. Even without access to an outdoor space, you could still compost. Come inside and I'll teach you a popular method called vermicomposting.
Really?
Yes, really. There are various methods to composting indoors, but one of the most popular methods is called vermicomposting. This type of indoor composting involves a worm bin. Not only do you reap the benefits with finished compost, but it's also very cool to watch the worms at work. To get started involves the materials here in front of us. These include a plastic container with a lid, a drill, an optional tray, and an optional fine screen. You will also need a bunch of worms, specifically the red wiggler species, since they are ideal for indoor composting. These can either be ordered online or bought through a local retailer. To prevent odors and provide the worms with a comfortable environment, you will need some newspaper. With a drill, you'll make small holes on the lid of the plastic container and around the sides. If you have a tray, drill holes at the bottom of the bin so that you can collect the drainage from the compost, though this is not necessary. When your bin is placed on top of your tray, the liquid collected, called leachate, can be disposed of or used to fertilize houseplants. Another optional step is to paste the fine screen over the holes by using non-toxic glue to keep your worms inside and pests outside. After doing so, you want to create bedding for your worms to thrive and be comfortable. This bedding also helps absorb moisture and prevent odors. With your newspaper, tear 1-inch wide strips and moisten them with water, squeezing the excess water out. After gathering a bunch of wet torn newspaper, fill the bin about 2/3 full with the bedding. Now that you have your bedding, you can gently pour your red wigglers on top. Now all that's left is to feed your worms. You can either feed them little by little, but it is recommended to feed them once every week since they like to be alone. To do so, you should collect food scraps and keep them in a second plastic container. If you don't have a place to put your food scraps for the time being, you can always put them in the freezer or your fridge. If both are full, you can set your food waste aside with newspaper covering it to help prevent odor.
I guess you can say the newspaper acts as brown waste?
Exactly. I'm glad you've been paying attention. When you feed your worms, add your food scraps at different locations in the bin. This helps evenly distribute the organic matter in your compost. To know you're doing everything right, carefully observe your bin. It should not smell bad, and the food scraps and bedding should disappear over time. It should not look too wet inside. It should look damp. Your compost should take about 3 to 6 months to finish. To harvest, you could either try separating the worms from your compost with gloves, or you can choose a 1-month-long process that includes pushing the compost to the side and adding new bedding beside it. Over the course of a month, add more food scraps to the new bedding, and the worms will gradually migrate to where new food awaits. Once your worms have moved over, you can scoop out your compost and use it for your houseplants, gardening, and so much more. The vermicompost becomes toxic to the worms if left in the bin for too long without new food scraps, so make sure to extract the humus once it's done to keep your worms safe. To prevent mold and odors, add more newspaper, sawdust, and other brown waste to absorb moisture. With bins, you keep everything within a controlled, warm environment to facilitate decomposition, but you could definitely still compost without a bin by piling and layering your food scraps outside. This might take longer though.
That's great. Thank you for teaching me all of this. I really appreciate you spending the time to explain the process to me step by step.
No worries. Educating people on sustainability and ways to be resourceful is one of the ways we can improve ourselves and help the environment.
Is that why you started composting?
Well, I learned that people waste about 1/4 of all the food they buy. Combined with other sources of food waste, over 1/3 of the food that the United States produces is never eaten, which ends up as the most common material landfilled and incinerated. As a result, the food releases methane gas, which occurs due to the decaying of organic waste under anaerobic conditions, much different than the aerobic process that compost uses. In turn, food waste contributes to 58% of annual landfill methane emissions.
You're telling me that 58% of methane emissions come from food waste?
Food waste contributes to climate change by releasing large amounts of methane into the atmosphere. Nationally, 13.5% of households are food insecure, which shows a severe fault in our food allocation system, which highlights the need to reduce food waste. The resources that went into the production of food are also lost, such as the agricultural land utilized, water, and energy. In turn, the environment is impacted by the degradation of freshwater resources, a loss of biodiversity, and the degradation of soil and air quality.
Oh, that's terrible. Our problems will only become worse as the human population grows. If we don't find ways to reduce food waste, we're going to end up with a lot more methane gas in the atmosphere and way less natural resources.
Hope is not entirely lost. There are a lot of different solutions to our food waste problem. Ever since the EPA and USDA announced their national goal to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by the year 2030, the government has been passing laws to support its goal. One of them includes the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act, which gives civil and criminal liability protection for good faith donations made for free to nonprofit organizations. New York State has passed its Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act to focus on organic waste as a climate change mitigation strategy. The state also has a food donation and food scraps recycling law, which states that large generators of food waste are required to donate eligible food to local hunger relief organizations and recycle inedible food scraps. Some ideas to help with food waste reduction include changing food packaging, portion sizes, selling imperfect produce that are still fine to eat in stores, giving uneaten food to animals, consumer education campaigns on food waste, and implementing composting on a community level. Making donating food easier could also help us get rid of food we don't think we necessarily need anytime soon. I hope that learning about compost was a fun and interesting experience. Now that you know what makes up compost, how to compost indoors and outdoors, as well as the importance of reducing food waste and its impact on the environment, you will be able to make informed and conscious decisions regarding the food that you eat. I hope to see your finished compost soon. Happy composting!